Tunavites, welcome back. The season is upon us. Games start tomorrow, or at least one game opening week of the season. We're excited to get going with the season, and we're glad that we actually have a season, right, Richard?
Yeah. Starts tomorrow. I'll be sleeping, but I'm excited.
Yes, we have football. It's here. Our 19th season is upon us, and so we're gonna break down today. Lots of news and notes to get to. We're gonna give our fantasy MVP picks for quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and then we're gonna make our week one predictions, and we might mention that crazy Insano guy as well. He used to drag us in the news all the time, so we'll get with it. All right, Richard. Let's just get right to it. Let's get to the news and notes. When we did our last episode, that was before – actually, it's kind of ironic that this was before the Leonard Fornette news. And I was thinking when I saw that he was released, I automatically thought back to our last episode with Jonathan, and we were talking specifically about Nathan's team and Fornette and all that bit about him. Yeah. So it was kind of funny how that, like, all of a sudden, we were specifically talking about Fornette with his team, and then boom, he was released. What's your thoughts on that?
I immediately questioned my predictions for the league a little bit, because I think I was on Dwayne and then I changed to Nathan last second. I think I'm gonna go back to Dwayne. Fornette did it.
Yeah, you remember, I was also just really torn between those two, and I picked Dwayne, so I feel really good. Once I saw that, I felt good. I was like, all right, that. But yeah, and then of course he goes to the Bucks. That was really fast. And, I kind of mentioned this to everybody else that the Ronald Jones hype train just came to a crashing halt with Leonard Fornette now, and that whole running back situation. What do you think about it?
I think you have a worry with Ronald Jones going to the Bucks because I know from my understanding, Arians likes his veterans a lot. He likes the old man strength, as it were. And, I think it's going to be interesting. I don't think you need to worry right now. I don't think Fornette can learn the playbook within 2 weeks of a starting job. So I think give it a couple weeks, but I think Fornette will go and get in there and take some work. I don't think Fournette's going to be – I could be wrong, but I don't think Fornette is going to take over the majority of the running roles. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be like a 70-30 split where Ronald Jones gets the 70. That's my guess. So it's going to be – I mean, Fornette was forced to catch the ball a lot last year, but typically he's not a catching running back, so I don't see him on third downs. And so it's really first and second down where you're going to see him. And I think Ronald Jones has the option to be able to go first, second, third at that point, and maybe open up his options to be able to go more. That's why I say 70-30. So his first two carries, or his first two plays, or downs. There we go. I couldn't think. You might see a mix between the two, but I think Ronald Jones will start. We'll have the majority of the role still.
Yeah,
maybe injury is going to force it too. So we'll see if Fornette stays healthy. That's the other question mark.
Yeah, that it seemed. I mean, Bruce Arians has said that he, it's Ronald Jones' job. I mean, essentially, it's still him. I kind of wonder if maybe what he's going to do is what he did last year. If you remember last year, of course, especially for us Bucs fans that followed, it was like one drive, Ronald Jones. The next drive, it was Peyton Barber, and it just seemed like they just kept changing. I wonder if it's going to be like that, or if it's like what you're saying, where maybe they bring in, it's mostly Ronald Jones, and then they kind of do more situational with Fornette. It's depending on the game script.
Right.
Yeah, it was an interesting move. I know they kind of linked several teams to him, and I mean, it makes sense from just a practical football stance for 1 year for Fornette, just the opportunity to get a championship and, kind of in between. But yeah, I wasn't necessarily expecting the Bucs to sign him just because we heard so much about all their other, they got McCoy, those other guys, and but there we are. So we had that move. That was a big move, and it seems like a lot of players. I mean, just right before the season, just things happening with different players. Some of it in the injury front, which we're about to talk about, and then the Jacksonville, that whole domino effect. So then it affected Ronald Jones and Fornette, both of them. They're together now. Then you had the whole Reid Peterson deal, where that was a surprise. They cut him.
Yeah.
So now everybody's
that made Gibson really exciting. Which I forget who picked up Gibson, but I immediately looked for him, and he was not available.
Yeah, Jonathan,
that's right, yeah. Jonathan. Yeah, yes. Which made me upset. I was like, "Dang it, that's who I'm going against this week."
I will say this about it was more, again, that was a whole ripple effect, and it shows you, especially with the running backs, unless you've got one of the really top ones, that are set for kind of a workhorse role. There's a lot of teams that just, running backs got affected. So Peterson goes to Detroit, and now it's just still kind of a mess, and what's going to happen with that. And then, at least for Washington with Gibson, that got him up the board. I think that Antonio Gibson is probably, I think he has the best chance where he was drafted and kind of where he's at to be this year's Austin Eckler, where he just, he's going to see, I mean, you got to think about it. Washington's probably going to be from behind most of the time. And if he's kind of more of a receiving type player that's playing running back, I don't know. I think he has that potential to be kind of that player this year. But we'll see.
Yeah, I agree.
And we had a couple other, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to highlight, Jacksonville losing Fornette made it really muddy over there too. I remember I picked up what's his name? Man, my brain, it's nighttime and I can't remember anything. I picked up
one of their guys.
Man, I'm sorry.
That's kind of what it's like with Jacksonville these days, Richard. One of those guys they got back there. Chris Thompson, right?
Chris Thompson, yeah. I picked him up as soon as I heard that Fornette got dropped, and then I saw Jonathan's message like 3 minutes later. It's like, dang it! So we kind of got each other a little bit, I think, with that. But no, it's gonna be interesting with Chris Thompson. I think that he's the favorite to get the most fantasy points, but I don't know if he's the starter. I think they made not Armstead. I think they made a different guy the starter, but I don't know. We'll see what happens in Jacksonville. They're tanking the season. They're pulling. Have you ever seen Major League where the owner tries to tank the team to move them to Miami? I feel like that's what's happened with Jacksonville to move them to London. So
I don't. Jacksonville very much seems like Miami was last year. They're trading away a lot of players. Now, the difference I'll say is that Miami kind of was already heading in that direction before last year, and then last year was just like the real push to say, hey, we're totally rebuilding. Where Jacksonville, I feel like this is, I mean, I know they traded Ramsey last year, but I feel like this year is still kind of like where we finally full out see it. Hey, we're totally rebuilding. And this, so yeah, from fantasy perspective, it's going to be really interesting to see, because with Gardner Minshew and the receivers, because when you have a team typically that is not good and they're always playing from behind, usually that's going to favor that quarterback and whoever the receivers, obviously DJ Chark and the others, to good fantasy numbers. So I'm really intrigued to see how that, kind of unfolds. We know DJ Chark is great. And of course, Minshew showed a lot of things last year, but I'm fascinated to see, because I think they're going to be bad. And so I'm fascinated to see how their offense goes without Fornette, because they don't have to feed Fornette all the time now. Yeah. And, it's going to be a different offense. So
I agree. It'll be interesting to watch. I'm going to be watching Bucs games and not Jags games.
Yeah.
I already asked my wife, can I buy a Tom Brady jersey from the Bucs?
You can jump on the bandwagon there, Richard.
That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm not shameful to admit it. Ashamed to admit it. I am jumping off the train going into the ditch of Jacksonville, and hopefully jumping on a train that's going to, I don't know what, to El Dorado, in the city of gold.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it just seems like a more exciting year for the Bucks, So I kind of want to follow. I don't want to waste the time I have available watching a team not do anything. I want to watch a team.
No, Richard, make no mistake about it. I have no interest in watching the Jags. I just am interested in fantasy purposes about what.
True. I'm just saying from watching a football perspective that I'm really excited about. The Jags is not the ones I'm going to be watching.
I'm excited about the Bucks. There's a lot of players, with all the movement within the last week.
Yeah.
There's a lot of players that, and I'm not gonna. This is the thing about our show, Richard. I'll highlight players, but I'm not going to point out. There's a lot of players on waiver wire right now that I'm looking at, and I can just see them being, somebody worth rostering, somebody who could end up being picked up next week because of all the kind of just clarity with, the training camp and some of these moves and injuries. So I don't know. I was watching this last week with all this stuff happening. I was like, man, this is, changing the landscape. And, I know some people, we did our draft. I think one thing I like about our league of doing our draft earlier, and I know some people say, well, wait. I mean, it's fun because you have to really, okay, who are the guys you're looking at? But then there's like that in-between time where, hey, you actually have to pay attention to training camp, the waiver wire, and you can kind of, things, if you get a sleeper that ends up being like Antonio Gibson, who was already kind of rising, and all of a sudden now, Jonathan's got to be feeling great about that pick. You're like, okay. And then, you have some bad picks, but then, you can still abandon those picks because, as we know, the draft is only part of it. Even if you drafted tonight, things are changing so much, especially with COVID and everything else that, and I'm sure after this week, there might be more injuries than we were used to because players basically had no preseason.
Didn't have a big training camp. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm hoping my players don't get hurt. Miles Sanders is definitely one I'm worried about. So,
So let's transition into that because in talking about injuries, I've noticed that we with no season and just training camp, there's been a lot of vague kind of injuries. People will say, hey, lower body injury, or, this, whatever. It's just, there's been a lot of vagueness when it comes to players. But now this week with the game, they're actually having to give more of a detailed kind of injury report. And I was reading a couple guys, some I was surprised at. And then, you mentioned Miles Sanders. I was just reading today that they may have to kind of ease him back into action. So that was, I wouldn't say I was surprised. We're getting more clarity on that. And so that I saw that. And then Mike Evans, I saw, I didn't even know, of course, he was hurt. And they're saying, well, we'll see how he goes for Sunday. And I guess I was like, wow. So, he's somebody who's a little bit up in the air now for Dwayne. And, just some of these guys that all of a sudden it's like, oh, they're actually maybe hurt and you didn't even know they were dealing with an injury because teams just didn't have to, give any kind of detailed report. So that's going to affect for sure this week with some main guys. So,
yeah, I heard that Kelsey was hurt too, which was a kind of a shock. I don't know. I was looking in the report to see if Kelsey was on there, but I don't see him. Maybe it was just a brief thing.
Yeah, no, I did see that. I saw something about a knee injury. I mean, some of these guys, I'm sure maybe it's just, hey, they're maintenance. They're just kind of, it's a small issue. But some of them, like I said, Sanders, I knew he was week to week, but then I was just kind of reading today that, well, maybe he's going to be eased in, week one, and they don't want to, I guess, it's a hamstring or whatever. So maybe that was the same with Mike Evans. But again, these injuries, and especially with no real preseason, I think everyone's going to be using their roster a lot. I mean, they do already, but this year maybe a little more crazy with everyone's roster week to week.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, man. You wanna? Can I implore you to just briefly go over the new COVID-19 IR slot for us?
Yeah. So before we hit that one, let me just remind all you Tunavites while I'm on it right now, we are going to do free agent bidding. We're continuing that. It will start next week. So when you put in your bids, it'll be the same thing. You get $100 for the season. I've really, Richard, I love that. That was a suggestion you made. I think it's been a great, fun thing for our league to have that. So if you're wondering, Tunavites, why we always do this, we don't start free agent bidding until the season actually starts, because we do our draft earlier. I have seen some leagues where as soon as the draft gets over, no matter what, even if it's a week or two, they start free agent bidding. But we just start it, with the season, and I think it's worked out pretty well that way. I mean, there's really not that many. Most free agent claims, people are just they can get them right away. So before the season, so we are starting that again.
When does that start? Is that after Thursday, or is that after next Tuesday?
It'll be after. So it'll be after this week. So yeah. So for Tuesday, so we'll have it set up so that way when you go in to put in your waiver claim, you'll have to put your bid in, and then after the Tuesday, of course, you can just pick up guys right away. If there's no waiting period on them, if they're just on the free agent deal. So yeah, that's where we're going with that. We'll have to hit up next week, Richard and Tunavites, that we did figure this out later towards the season. You can see and find out who bid on what player. So if they, it used to be you just saw, okay, this is who won and this was the price, but there is a place, and I don't have it right now, but we can go through it next week, where you can go find, like, hey, after Tuesday or Wednesday morning, you go, okay, I missed out on this guy, or if you're one of, like, somebody like me who's just curious, hey, did anybody bid? You can find out. So are you bidding against yourself? Are you, is there a lot of bids? I think a lot more often than not, people bid against themselves, but you just don't know, which is kind of the fun part of free agent bidding. But going into IR, and just so all the Tunavites, you're aware. So what we have done, we have 3 total IR spots. Okay, 2 of them are just for COVID-19. So what's going to happen is when you go to your roster, you'll see, I have 3 IR spots. Well, if you have a player that gets put on the COVID-19 list for the NFL, they will be eligible to go on the IR. So you'll be able to do that and put them on there. CBS made some changes so that we could do that, which is great. Normally we just carry 1 IR spot, and that's really the intention, is that the pure IR. So a guy, tears his ACL, whatever, something happens, he's out for the year, then he will just go strictly on the IR spot. But then if you have 2 spots just for COVID, so for instance, Richard's got up Reichwell Armstead for PC's team. He's on the COVID-19 list, so PC was able to go throw him on there. If for some reason that you put a player on there, so let's say you do have 2 guys that are just on the IR because they hurt their knee, their shoulder, whatever. If you have two guys or 2 players that are on, taking up 2 IR spots for those reasons, we're going to just say, hey, you've got, 1 extra player on IR he doesn't have COVID-19. You need to drop a player on your roster. If you don't do that, we'll just say we're going to drop somebody for you. So we'll give you kind of that, just, hey, I don't know if you realize, because sometimes, in the season, and if, assuming that maybe, if COVID-19, like right now, there's not many players on the list. So if the season's going well, and you just happen to, just because you put them on IR and didn't think about it, we're going to just say, hey, look, you need to fix your roster, because that's only the reason we added those 2 IR spots, was just for COVID-19, to help us, for everybody with their rosters, in case a lot of players end up getting thrown on the COVID-19 list. And, so that's
I think that's going to be helpful. I think it's going to keep the league fun. Because I know I was worried about having to drop players because they were on IR for a couple weeks just to be able to fill a roster. And I didn't want to lose the fun of having to do something like that when I didn't want to. So I appreciate our commissions taking steps to be able to account for that. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah. We hope we have a good season. Hopefully we don't have to utilize that so people can have their full players and all that. But
Yeah.
all right, Richard, what's next?
Well, I thought we talked about going into the MVP predictions for the
Yes.
quarterback, wide receiver, and running back.
Yes.
So, Reid, you're more prepared than this, and I. Why don't you go ahead and talk about your MVP for this year for quarterback, your prediction?
All right, so I'm going to probably go I'm not going to go with your typical guys that we could easily – it'd be easy to say Michael Thomas, CMC, Lamar Jackson, and nobody will be surprised if those guys are, MVP favorites. But I'm going to go a little bit different with my predictions. They'd be guys that either, A, they're being drafted much later or they're on the ranks that are much later that, kind of have that ability to have just a phenomenal season, MVP-type fantasy season. Or there may be somebody who is kind of there, if you're in a draft and you get them in the early rounds that has that ability to maybe make that jump this year, to have a career season. So that's where I'm going. I'm going with my picks. So, yes. So for quarterback, am I going first, Richard? Am I?
Yeah, you're going first. You're going
okay.
first.
All right. So this one was really hard. For me, because there's a lot of quarterbacks we talked a lot about when we went to team reviews about some of the players that people drafted that have a great chance to to be that kind of MVP level. It would not surprise me. We got Mahomes, we got Jackson, Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray. We went through all those players, but I'm going to pick a player that I'm going to go with. So Richard, I'm going to pick Josh Allen as an MVP pick.
Hey,
yeah, there you go.
I like it.
There you go. So here's why I'm picking him. Based on where he was drafted, I think that Josh Allen has the ability to be that MVP type quarterback for you. And I will say this: MVP to me, it doesn't necessarily mean they have to have like the number one in fantasy points at that position. Part of, at least, the way I factor a fantasy MVP is, yes, obviously they're leading maybe their position, but also, if they're like, somebody that you got way later and they've just like they're the top 5 or whatever, I think they definitely can. So I think Josh Allen, with his rushing ability, adding Stephon Diggs, I don't know. I just think that the ability's there, and I think a lot of people, they just don't look at him like the other mobile quarterbacks. So I think he has a great chance this year to be a fantasy quarterback MVP.
I like the pick.
I'm sure you do.
I was just going to pick all my players to do the MVP, and you stole Josh Allen from me. So I'm going to have to go with something different. I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, if Donald hadn't kept Tom Brady, I might have gone with Tom Brady, because of the history with Bruce Arians and older quarterbacks and who are really good at throwing the ball. I feel like that pairing, I just can't help but think that Tom Brady's going to do really well. He's got great weapons between his 2 wide receivers, his running back. We talked about his running back, his 2 and his tight end, who he knows very well. And so that was going to be it. But because Donald kept him, I'm not going to pick MVP. Come on, a keeper cannot be an MVP. Maybe he can, but I don't know. So I'm going to go a different route. I'm actually going to go with Ben Roethlisberger. And the reason is mainly because of draft capital. He went so late in the draft that I think that he has the potential to be an every week starter. His weapons are pretty good as well. And I think that the Steelers really want to bounce back from last year hard. I've heard predictions of them going to the Super Bowl. I don't know if I agree with it, but that's who I'm going to be eyeing and seeing, how true that's going to be.
No, I like it. Yeah, I'm really interested to see how he looks coming back, and just with the Steelers, can they be that offense that we saw before last year? Yeah. So that's a good one.
That'll be interesting. It's going to be interesting. All right. So now we're going to go on to wide receiver.
Oh, we're going to wide receivers. Okay. Yes. All right, Richard, I got to be honest. This one was really hard for me because, like I said, I have no problem. Like Michael Thomas, it would not surprise me if he ends up being the top receiver again. Devontae Adams, I mean, those guys are going to get so much volume. And, so I won't be surprised if they finish. But I didn't want to just go with one of the top. I wanted to go with somebody who at least, has shown the ability and could have that kind of season that would be kind of a wide receiver MVP season. And so I'm going to go – kind of pains me a little bit because I owned him last year, but I didn't redraft him. So it's kind of like, but I just see the potential, and that's A.J. Brown. And so, Nathan, I'm showing you some love. And
we did not prepare, for the record, guys. We did not tell each other who we were going to pick.
Is that your pick?
Yes.
Oh, that's funny.
Like 2 in a row, we picked the same player. Go on.
So here's the deal with A.J. Brown. And I was torn, like I said, and I had no problem redrafting him. And he was somebody I considered, and I'm not going into all the, draft strategies. We talked about all that and just how, I kind of changed as we went a little bit. But I would have had no problem redrafting him. In fact, there was part of me after the draft that kind of was like, I kind of wish I would have, just because I love A.J. Brown so much. I think the knock on him, and this will really kind of a really key factor to me, if he can just go to be one of the top receivers this year, is just volume. I think a lot of people, he was so efficient last year when he, I think he led the league per catch. It was like plus 20 yards or something crazy or close to there. And so a lot of people are saying, well, in that offense, they're going to run the football, play defense, and aren't going to throw it enough. So, and I think those are valid arguments. But where I make an argument for him is that the first half of the season, he was not playing nearly as much. I mean, the second half of the season, he was a full-time player. He started getting a lot more targets, even for a low-volume passing offense. And I just look around their team, and, I mean, they've got a sleeper tight end in Jonnu Smith, but, I mean, he is that guy. And I actually think with Derrick Henry, that has to keep defenses honest. And so I think Brown, I don't think he has to have, 130 targets or 140 targets or whatever, whatever the top number in targets is to be that guy. I think he could go from, I think he was somewhere around 80 targets or something his rookie year to, he could easily do 110, 120. And I think he is so good that he could have that kind of season. I mean, he's a special player. And, now that I talk about him more, I'm like, man, I really wish he was on my team. But, I was making fun of Nathan about being all in on the Titans on, draft night when he drafted him. But, he's just, to me, he's a great player. I mean, it may not line up this year with his volume, but I think he's that kind of player that if things go right this year and he gets enough volume, I think he could easily be the number one fantasy wide receiver.
Yeah. And I think what makes him more exciting is the fact that Tannehill's throwing him the ball, because he really took off last year when Tannehill came on the scene. And Tannehill's no longer restrained by Miami. He seems to be a lot more opening up the ball a lot more. So I think, I agree. I think A.J. Brown is going to be very good this year. I think it's going to be tough to try to get him from Nathan, but I'm going to try at some point.
You're trying to get that's good. Good. See there, Nathan, I know you think we're fake news, but we're throwing some love out there to you.
So since you took A.J. Brown from me, I'm going to go with Marquise Brown. I'm going to go with Hollywood. Okay. I know he's on my team. I know I said I was going to pick all my players, and I might still. But there's a reason why I picked Marquise Brown, and I honestly think I reached for him a little bit. I could be wrong. Maybe other people disagree. That maybe it was the right spot, but I think I reached a little bit. But I think it's because of Lamar Jackson and the big playability that he has, and the fact that Hollywood has a sprint he's really fast and really good, to where I really did pick him to be my high upside type of player, and so I have high hopes for him a lot, and I'm looking forward to seeing if that comes true. So yeah, we'll see. That's my pick. I don't really have a whole lot of analysis from that. Yep. So much as that's just the thoughts I had about him.
No, I like his upside this year. He's healthy. Last year he played not super healthy, and so I like the upside he has this year. There were reports in training camp that I read that he's like kind of bulked up because he's a small receiver, but he's super fast. But he's actually added like a good amount of muscle for his size, so to try to keep up throughout the season. So Yeah, I do. All right, Richard. So am I going first with running back, or are you going first with running back?
Well, for running back, I'm going to pick my player again. No. I really like Josh Jacobs. I think we can all agree that maybe I'm a little bit too high on Josh Jacobs, but some industry standard, looking at the industry, they wouldn't disagree with me. But I won't go Josh Jacobs. What I'll do is I'm actually going to go Antonio Gibson, and
Oh, wow.
because Peterson left. I mean, Peterson wasn't bad last year. I mean, he was decent for that team. Yes, it's a new regime, and maybe they wanted to get, I mean, but the camp, what was coming out of camp was Peterson was being a great leader, and that he was doing everything he was supposed to. And when the exit interview he had when he got released, he said that he was realizing that Gibson was becoming the guy, in that he saw that they wanted a guy and it looked like Gibson was going to be it. So so the fact that our draft happened before all this happened makes him a steal, in my opinion. To where I think it might not happen right away, but I think as the season goes on and he gets comfortable, I think just because of where he got drafted and the role that he's going to take over, I think is going to be good. So that's my pick.
Well, Richard, this Tunavites, I got to tell you, Richard and I did not have this plan to go on all of Richard's guys and make this like the Richard MVP show. But I'm honestly, these are guys that I'm looking at that I just see the MVP season here. And Richard, it's I gotta say this. So running back, it's not going to be any of the top guys. That's too easy. I can talk about all the top guys, and we could, and probably one of them will finish as the top. Even Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's the hot rookie. I'm not even going to bring him in. That would be wouldn't be surprised by that. I've heard some people say Jonathan Taylor, if he could like somehow be like the main guy, he could. But I'm going to go with the guy that has played a couple years in the league, and I just think it lines up for him this season to be an MVP, and that's Joe Mixon. And nobody's really talking about him, but he just got his 4-year contract. They have Joe Burrow, and even though he's a rookie, they've got the weapons. They've got Boyd. They've got AJ Green back. I just think everything lines up for him because he can do it all. He not only runs, he catches really well. And so I just think, there's been kind of talk the last couple of years that maybe this is going to be the year. I just think this year – for him, he could really, because the Bengals are probably still not going to be a great team overall, I think he could surprise a lot of people in just being so good. I mean, I know he's kind of been like this first round pick anyways for a back end of the first round for a lot of people and just a regular redraft league. But I just like Joe Mixon for his prospects this year. And I just think if you look at all the running backs, I just think he has a path where I could really see him just ascend to be like in that conversation of top 5, or even just like, when you get to Alvin Kamara and some of those guys right there, the fringe top 5. He's just a guy I like a lot this year. And so that's where I'm going, Richard. I'm going Joe Mixon. So running back MVP.
Let me give you some facts about Joe Mixon. And this is why I like Joe Mixon so much. And why
Here we go.
I traded for him in 2019 before the draft. I then traded him away, and only to trade later with John Mack to get him back before the trade deadline, so I could have him as a keeper when I knew that I wasn't going to the playoffs. Because Joe Mixon, when he came into the league, I think it was the same year as Fornette. If it wasn't, I think it was either the year. I think it was the year after. If it wasn't the same year as Fornette, and the reason that he wasn't drafted ahead of Fornette was because he had legal problems. He was I think there were some domestic issues that he had alleged in college, and I think that's why he dropped in the draft. But he was one of the best running backs coming out during that time frame, and as a whole, within the years before and the years after, was one of the best prospects at running back. To where he just was not like Marvin Lewis wasn't doing anything with him. They wanted to let him loose a little bit last year, but they held him back. So I'm really excited about this year with him to where I'm I'm really excited. My only concern is that he's questionable for week 1 for this week, and I'm playing Jonathan, which is not great if he doesn't play. Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Richard, I didn't realize he had an injury designation.
Yeah, I didn't. He had the injury before he got the contract. Okay. So he's questionable the same way Miles Sanders is questionable. So, okay. But it's week 1. We'll see what happens on game day if they switch it to active. So I just got to pay attention and make sure that I do the right thing with my running backs.
Yeah. No, that's good. I like that. Tunavites, like I said, wasn't like, hey, let's just go look at Richard's roster. These were actually guys that when I was going through the list, they're guys that I feel like they're on the fringe of just being able to take off. And so obviously as we get into the season, Richard, we'll, like we did last year, once we kind of get to that like halfway point, we'll kind of start talking about, who we think the fantasy MVPs are. And, again, like last year, CMC was already one of the top picks or whatever last year. And so he was awesome. And of course he was an obvious MVP pick. And so, it could happen again. He could repeat, but I think part of that MVP is kind of finding those guys that kind of ascend, like Lamar Jackson last year. Those guys, it always happens. Somebody ascends to be that one of the top players in their position. So it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun to talk about and see. And we'll see how close or how far off we were with our MVP picks. And
guys, the reason we're not doing tight end is because we've exhausted the Mark Andrews conversation enough to where we don't need we don't need to talk about him anymore.
You brought him up, Richard. Okay, you brought him up. I didn't bring him up. You brought him up. All right, we got to get back on tape.
All right, man. Let's go on to our week 1 predictions. Captain Insano put out his predictions. I appreciate his opinions and his analysis. They seem pretty good. So I enjoyed watching it and learning from him a little bit on his thought process and how he evaluates. And I gotta say, I kind of like his picks. It might be because he picked me to win over Jonathan, but hey, he keeps picking me. I might keep liking it.
Well, Richard, Captain Insano, you never know what he's going to do. Okay, I got to ask before we go in our predictions. What do you think the chances are that Captain Insano stays with us all season this year?
I think that if we challenge him enough, he can't stay away. He loves the limelight, and I just don't see how he's not going to be able to get away from that camera and not show his face. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think his new job with Daddy Daycare, I think is going to keep him, pretty much in the loop and with us all season. So, I think he's got job security there, and I guess he's back. So I'm glad he's back. We'll have him on the show at some point, and we'll have to ask him, and maybe that'll be good. So we'll get to Captain Insano. Captain Insano, we're glad that you're back. We're glad that you're okay so you're here, you're with us. And so let's dive in, Richard, with our predictions for this week 1.
All right. Well, we're going to go into PC and Aaron first off. So why don't I go ahead and start us off? We've got basically an even matchup, right?
Yep.
I sound so prepared.
Richard really analyzed this game.
CBS has a really close game, and I think it's mainly because it's interesting that the quarterbacks are. I don't know how to explain it, but they are even to me. I mean, Devontae Adams, Michael Thomas, toss up. Michael Gallup, DeAndre Hopkins. I could see it going either way. Travis Kelce is definitely better than Noah Fant, so on and so forth. I think if I were to pick out an MVP for this line, I kind of want to see what Stephon Diggs does with Josh Allen. I'm curious what that's going to look like. I think if he goes off week 1, man, it's going to be an exciting time to have Josh Allen, but also exciting for Aaron to have Diggs.
So who are you picking?
I'm gonna go Aaron.
Okay.
I want to. I'm gonna pick Highland Celts losing 2 in a row, but I hate to rub it in, but that's the way it's looking.
Yeah, just quickly, Brandon Cooks, he was one of the guys that popped in the injury. He's very questionable for tomorrow night. So that definitely factors in. PC will have to go with possibly somebody else in there. It is obviously pretty evenly, but I like Aaron this week. I think the key matchup that I'm looking at is our 2 players for each team is kind of Devin Singletary and Aaron Jones. There's been a lot of talk about Singletary splitting work with Zach Moss, so I'm kind of interested to see how that plays out in week 1, and I think that's going to be a key matchup. And then Aaron Jones, there was a lot of stuff made about the rookie running back that they drafted. And so he had the last time he played Minnesota, Aaron Jones had a big game. So I think that's a key matchup that I'm going to be watching between those 2 teams, but I like Aaron this week.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
We agree. All right. Well, let's go on to the next one then, and let's go with the Old Man Bowl between Donald and Bruce.
The Old Man Bowl. All right. Well, this is, I think Bruce is the highest. He's projected as the highest scoring team this week, but Donald also is up there in points. This is an interesting game, but I'm just going to make it simple here. And this is not a knock on Donald's team, but I like Bruce this week. Tariq Cohen should get more volume, at least passes, because David Montgomery looks like he's going to be out. And so I just, Tom Brady, I'm excited about him. He's on the Bucks, but not having that off season and preseason, I don't know how great of a first week he's going to have, especially if Mike Evans can't go. Again, I still love Brady for all the weapons he has, but I like Bruce in this matchup.
I'm actually going to go opposite you. I'm going to go Donald.
Okay.
I think, just real quick, I think Juju's going to do better than Odell. I think wide receiver wise, I think they're about even. I think I got Keenan Allen a little bit too excited about Hard Knocks to where maybe Keenan Allen is. I have a little bit more faith in Keenan Allen than I should. Le'Veon Bell, there's a lot of negativity, not about Le'Veon Bell, but just coming out of that camp where it just doesn't. Le'Veon Bell's not exciting.
Yeah.
Where I'm nervous about Tariq Cohen. It's Chicago.
Yeah.
And they lost their starter running back, which is part of the problem there. I think the MVP is going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire just because, he's supposed to be. And so why not pick him and just assume that he's going to go off and he's going to show why everybody's excited about him.
Okay. All right. Who we got next, Richard?
We're going to go with Nathan and Josh.
Captain Insano. Okay.
Let me pull up their thing real quick. There you are. All right, go ahead.
All right, so this matchup, Nathan was one of the. I'm going to be picking up some upsets this week, Richard. I'm just going to tell you right now, I've got some upsets here. Week 1 is always really. It's funny. Week 1 to me is always tricky because you have your stars can still be stars, but it's typical to have a lot of guys that maybe start off slow. Week 1 just don't have a good game. And I always feel like we always have surprises, like there's some upsets, not necessarily meaning that, hey, this team that won week 1 is just going to take off. But I don't know. It seems to me like we have, more upsets in the early going, especially because some players just start slow. But not to topple on Nathan with the Fornette news. But I like Josh. I like Josh in this matchup. I just think he has to me, he's got really great matchups this week with his team. And as much as I like Nathan this year, I just really like Josh this week. James Conner, who's somebody I'm going to key in on. He was a guy I already liked coming into the season. And Josh had drafted him. And just earlier today, I read that Mike Tomlin came out and said he is our bell cow running back. So as long as he's healthy, he is going to be the guy. And he's got a juicy matchup against the Giants. And so I'm taking Josh in this one.
All right. Well, we're going to have to differ again. I'm going to go with Nathan.
Okay.
Not because he picked me, but that's part of it. No, I just think it's so even actually I think it's a coin flip, even though the CBS disagrees, and maybe I'm just dumb, but I just see. I mean, Deshaun Watson just got paid, which is great, but he's going against Kansas City, whose defense is not easy. Their defense, I think, is pretty good. I think the running backs are a toss. I think they're pretty equal. CBS looks like they agree. Wide receivers are pretty equal. Tight ends pretty equal. Flex we're showing is equal. I don't disagree with any of this. I guess the defense is what makes the difference, but I don't know. I mean, it's just I don't know. I just got a feeling that Nathan's going to do well, and I think the MVP is going to be Matthew Stafford. I think he's going to show up against Chicago his first week, and I think he's going to outscore Deshaun Watson.
Okay. Well, and I guess I should clarify as we're looking at this. Nathan is, according to CBS, the underdog. So I guess I'm looking at this as from I really think I said last episode that Dwayne and Nathan I think are really the top dogs in that division, but this week I like Josh to pull off the victory. So, all right, who's next?
All right, we're gonna go to the whiteout, Daryl and Dwayne.
Oh yes, the battle of the brothers.
Well, I don't know if we could say the brothers because there's multiple sets.
True, that's true.
But yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'll start. I think Dak's gonna go off against the Rams. I think Roethlisberger is going to go off against the Giants. I think, it seems like every game I'm saying it's going to be close, and it's maybe because it's week one, but everything just looks so even. It's crazy on how even everything looks. I'm gonna go with T.Y. Hilton. I don't know why I say T.Y. Hilton as the MVP, and I think that. His team's going to go, which I got to remember. So, yeah, I think Daryl's going to win against Dwayne purely just because Dak and T.Y.
Okay. Well, I agree with you. I think Daryl's going to win this week, and I'm concerned about Mike Evans for this week. I mean, maybe he'll be okay, but I do have some concern about that, as far as is he going to play and how effective is he going to be. But I just like Daryl this week. I like his matchups. There's some players that, you could look at as running backs, Gordon, Taylor. How much are they really going to do, especially with Taylor and his backfield and Gordon? But I just like you mentioned, Prescott and his receivers and tight. I mean, I just love his other matchups are really good to me. And so I like him this week. I think this was going to be a close game for sure, but I like Daryl.
Okay. I don't know if you noticed at the top, it showed that Dwayne is 11-1 against as far as all time against the owner of this account of Daryl's team.
He's owned Daryl.
So I think Daryl's due. I think is what is the bottom line.
Okay. That's good. That's a good note.
All right. Well, let's go on to my game against your fellow commish. Why don't you go ahead and talk about it? I won't because it's my team, and we don't talk about our own teams. So why don't we go ahead and talk about the Richard and Tum Tum the matchup?
Well, this one is this is probably the hardest game that I was looking at and trying to pick. Couple different factors. Obviously the Miles Sanders, you don't have him in right now, and there's some question about him, or is he going to be limited? That's kind of that weighed into my decision on looking who I'm picking to win this week. And like I said, they're really close. If you just go by just going down the matchup, I mean, he's got CMC, of course, he's going to be great. I don't love Kyler Murray's matchup with San Francisco this week. As much as I love Kyler Murray this year, I just don't love the matchup. Of course, I love Josh Allen. And so I think for this week, Richard, I've been going back and forth on this one. This is the pick where I've just been waffling back and forth on who I'm going to pick. But I think I'm going to – this is tough. He's got me on the spot. I'm gonna go with. Richard. I'm gonna take you this week. I'm going with you this week.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
This is hard, man. It really is hard. There's a lot of. Oh, man, maybe I'm going to flip flop. Maybe I'm going to go Jonathan. See, this is why I was literally looking at this game and I was just like, this is the closest game to me matchup wise.
The problem is, part of it is that Johnson has Christian McCaffrey, who's 1.5 players by himself.
That's true.
The question is Raheem Mostert his own person, or is he a half, or is he, what tips the scale on that regard? But it's going to be. I think. Miles Sanders hurt, I think, is what makes me more nervous than anything else as far as what Jonathan winning over me. I think if I could start Miles with a lot of confidence, I'd be more inclined to be excited about this week and winning. But no, I'm really nervous. So I understand your nervousness or your flip-flopping. So I get it.
Hey, Richard, you should have just left it be, and I had your pick. Now you changed my mind. I'm picking Jonathan. I'm picking Jonathan. There we go. I have it. I'm picking Jonathan. You talked me out of it.
It's fine. It's fine. It's tough. So I couldn't help but talk about it, a little bit. I had to highlight the fact that CMC is just not he's a cheat code, and it's not fair.
That's true. Well, and his matchup is a pretty good one too. So
yeah. All right, let's go to the last one. Let's go to you and your matchup, which is against John Mack in the same division. I think. Let's see. So I'm the one talking about this one, right? Because it's you.
Yeah. You're it. You're it.
Your running backs are amazing. I really like your running back setup with Saquon and Austin Eckler. Arguably, first and second round picks in a redraft league. Chris Carson and Mark Ingram are not far behind, but I really like your running backs. I think Austin, if he can repeat next year, I think is going to be fantastic. That's kind of the way I'm leaning. Lamar Jackson, I hope he can repeat last year just for the sake of just how exciting he was. You picked up DJ Moore, which is who I was going to pick up if I were to kept my draft picks. I like him. Will Fuller is going to be interesting. You can't quit Will Fuller, right? Because you've had him for the last 20 years. I'm voting again. I'm rooting against Cooper Kupp only so that Woods can have more touches. Mark Andrews, enough said. I think I'm just going to pick you just because that's just the way it's like you're running back so much that I just can't say anything to where you cannot be the pick here. I think Captain Insano had Texas Titans being the lowest scorer this week, and I understand where he's coming from, and I kind of agree that Reid you're gonna win this week.
Well, we'll see. Well, it'll be interesting. With John Mack, he's got AJ Green said he's gonna come back and play, and John Mack, even though he missed the second half of his draft, he's got a pretty solid team. And I will say this about and I love Barkley, of course, and he's one of the top guys, but this week might be a little bit tougher just because they're going against Pittsburgh, and that defense, if it's anything like it was last year, they were pretty awesome. And so he might not, his numbers might be a little bit more in check this week just because of the matchup. But
maybe maybe because it's week 1, but he's a top 3 running back for a reason. It's because he can transcend matchups.
Yeah.
So I don't. That's why I'm kind of a little bit more confident with him. Is just because he's that good to where he can go beyond that. For fantasy football purposes, he can definitely go beyond that.
Yeah.
That's kind of my thought.
Okay. Well, that's Richard, you picked John Mack to win our division, right?
I did.
Okay, so I thought maybe he's going to go with John Mack, and he's just so.
No, this week it's going to be, and it's just matchups related basically, and just.
All right. Well, Tunavites, that's a wrap for week 1. Best of luck to you all this week. And next week, we will be recapping week 1 action, injuries, free agent bidding, Captain Insano's craziness, and anything in between. So, Richard, best of luck this week.
Yes, sir. You too.
All righty.
Tunavites. I'm excited.
Yeah. Stay fishy, Tunavites. See you next week.
See you.